Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session on connected cars. Before we get started, I'd like to review a few housekeeping items and let you know how you can participate in today's session. Our webinar will be greatly enhanced by your participation, so we encourage you to submit your questions via the Ask a Question button throughout today's presentation. We will answer as many questions as we have time for at the end. If you experience any audio issues during the session, please click on the Rate This button on the top of your player window and follow the instructions to receive help. Just a reminder that this event will be available on demand just a few minutes after the session ends. Everyone in attendance will receive an email with a link to the recording and some additional resources. In the meantime, we invite you to follow our Bright Talk channel for access to upcoming events and on-demand content. Now let's get started by introducing today's presenter. Ed Adams is a software quality and security expert with over 20 years experience in the field. He served as a member of the Security Innovation Board of Directors since its inception in 2002 and took over as CEO in 2003. Ed is a research fellow at the Ponemon Institute, serves on the board of several IT security organizations, and was named a Privacy by Design Ambassador by the Information and Privacy Commissioner of Canada. And with that, Ed, it's off to you.
Thank you, Rebecca. As Rebecca was just saying, here's a little bit about me. She's pretty much covered it. One thing she did not cover is that in my earlier days, I was an engineer that built non-lethal weapon systems, much like the ones you see pictured. And it was a lot of fun, actually, especially doing the field testing where we take unsuspecting engineers out into literally a field and shoot them with fast hardening foam or ensnare them with these nets with perimeter weights on them and then time how long it would take them to escape. But I matured from those days into the software world, and for the past 20 years or so, I've been working in the software industry, going on 25 at this point. And I will let my co-host, Larry, introduce himself.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm Larry Ponemon, and I'm here to be the virtual presenter with my friend Ed Adams. You may know that I am the chairman and founder of Ponemon Institute. We are a research company that is linearly focused on data protection, privacy, and information security. We've done a fair amount of research on the Internet of Things and also on the automotive industry and a whole bunch of other industries as well. Today we really are focused on the whole issue of autonomous automobiles, self-driving vehicles, and things that can get us into a lot of trouble if we have security glitches. So again, I am very happy to co-present with my friend Ed. Sit back and relax and enjoy the next several minutes.
Thank you, Larry. For those of you that are old enough to remember, like I am, I think Larry kind of looks like evil Spock from the original Star Trek series in that one episode where there was a parallel universe and Spock actually had a goatee and everything. He doesn't think so as much, but I do. Larry and I, obviously, we're not in the same place. I'm sitting in one part of the world. Larry's in a different part of the world and recorded those to be with us virtually. So we're going to talk about connected cars, and along the way, I'm going to talk about not just connected cars in general, but specifically a program that has been going on with the Department of Transportation in the US and the European Union as well. But I want to start just by talking about connected cars and how the fact that they are already part of the Internet of Things. When folks think about IoT, most people think about a smartphone or a remote sensor or an IP-enabled video camera. They don't necessarily think about a car, but cars are already part of the Internet of Things. They're not in the process of getting connected. They're already very much connected. And if you assume that a connected thing is some device that has an IP address and can send and receive data, well, then absolutely a car can qualify for that. But what enables the Internet of Things? What makes it go? If you ask my mom, she's going to tell you it's magic, because in her mind, everything just works. But to me, it's really software. Software is what is powering in enabling the Internet of Things. And even in a world where we've got electronic devices and smartphones, most of those things are software controlled, even the hardware that we tend to hold in our hands or sit in as we're driving down the road. So a quick quiz for some of you folks. I won't be able to hear your responses as I do when I'm delivering this in a live audience. However, a couple of comparison points for you. We've got the 787 Dreamliner from Boeing, an absolutely beautiful aircraft, 6.5 million lines of code, which is a lot. That is a lot of code. Compare that with the smaller, nimbler F-22 Raptor, which has 1.7 million lines of code. And then compare that to a 2016 Ford F-150. And just take a guess at how many lines of code are in that pickup truck. Normally, I'll get, oh, maybe it's 3 million or maybe it's 10 million. Well, how about 130 million lines of code, which is astonishing, riding around with you in your pickup. And it's not just 130 million lines of code. It's 100 different computer chips, 5 separate networks, 2 miles of cable, and 10 different operating systems. And if you consider that an average software developer makes about 1 error for every 1,000 lines of code, think about how many software flaws are riding around with you in your pickup truck. And we've seen systems like aircraft being software controlled and having software problems. In fact, the Boeing 737 MAX 8, which has been grounded pretty much across the globe these days, the fix for that is a software patch. So in the US, for the first time in nearly 40 years, a major airliner has been grounded for a significant amount of time. And the fix for that is not going to include a single wrench, screwdriver, or piece of hardware. It's a software update for the 737 MAX 80, which is amazing. So now let's hear from my friend Larry again about the connected cars market.
Hello again,
Okay, Larry,
and Ed, take us to the next slide, please. Now this slide, or at least part of it, talks a little bit about the connected vehicle marketplace today and in the not too distant future. Now this is an estimate. It's not based on Ponemon Institute data, but it basically is a reasonable estimate of what we think the marketplace will look like. My gut tells me it's not looking like this quite now. It's a little bit slower than was projected here, but the projection is enormous. Any way you look at it, it's exponential growth from 2013 to 2020. So again, these numbers may be off a little bit, but it still suggests that this is a huge potential marketplace, especially for people like you who do security well, because this marketplace is a disaster if you don't have good security, good controls in place, and so on. So again, this is just part of the story. Let's look at the other part of the story. Yes, the economic value of the marketplace. So it's not just the size of the marketplace. The economic value is potentially enormous. The range here from 152 billion BI technologies or BI intelligence to a little over 90, nearly $100 billion for research and markets. There is some variation in these estimates, but any of these estimates suggest huge economic value for organizations and other connected vehicles. And again, the key word is secure. As a researcher, I know that this tells me that to do security right, you have to master lots of different things. You have to have all of these components working as an integrated whole, and security needs to be baked in. So what do we mean by components? Well, on the external side, we have things like Bluetooth technology, we have the internet, we have Wi-Fi, we have key fob, and we have many of these things, tire pressure monitors, tail lights, and so on. They all need to work as an integrated whole to the system, the automobile being a system. On the internal side, we have diagnostic ports, CD, DVDs, USB, SD card, aux input, CAN bus is very important, and other networks may be connected, and even your mobile phone can be another part of the components that are necessary to achieve a high level of security. So again, not to worry you, but to do security right, you really have to be the master of security. The car becomes more than a car. It's an integrated and very complex system, as Ed mentioned before. Ed, any comments that you'd like to add to this slide? Well, I can't tell if you have any comments since I'm virtual.
Very funny, Larry. Always making jokes. I love it. In fact, I do have a couple of comments on this slide. Thank you very much. One of the things that I like to point out here is you see all of these different systems, and they're numbered because even though ultimately they become relatively connected, and most of it gets connected through the CAN bus, or a lot of it gets connected to the CAN bus, you can easily see why an automobile ends up having over 100 million lines of code. You've got the braking system that historically was a physical braking system, then it moved to hydraulic controlled, and then electronic and software controlled, and that evolved on its own. And that's separate from the fuel injection system, that's separate from the steering system, that's separate from any one of the applications in the infotainment system, and all of those developed independently. And even the tire pressure monitors, most folks don't realize that there's a sensor in there. It's a software controlled sensor, and it's broadcasting the pressure of your tires wirelessly on a constant basis. There's another sensor in the car that picks up that message and delivers to you, depending on the make and model of your vehicle, a message that to the driver that says your tire pressure is low in the front left tire. Well, all of that wireless communication from your tire pressure monitor is actually sent in completely clear text. And if you're anywhere within 6 feet of a vehicle, you can pick that up. You can disrupt it, impersonate it, and that's true for a lot of the different systems in the automobile. So this is something that it's not new, but as each one of these systems has evolved independently, the car in a lot of ways has had kind of a Frankenstein effect, where all these different pieces are put together, and now there's a whole bunch of integration or glue code that's trying to make it all work together.
Okay, the hacker threat. It's pretty clear, and we don't have to look at all of these different headline stories, but we hear about this almost on a daily basis, that hackers are becoming better at what they do, stealthier, more aggressive, better funded. All of this is true. And we know that in the world of self-driving automobiles, autonomous automobiles, what's our big fear? The hacker getting into our car and pushing our car off a cliff, or creating massive damage, rush hour in Atlanta or something like that. These are not science fiction issues. These are real issues that can happen, with probably not too much difficulty, because it's already been done. It's already been demonstrated that hackers can take over.
Yeah, and some of these are well known, like the Jeep hack from 2016, 2017. But others are less well known, but amazingly simple to do, like with about $30 of off-the-shelf equipment, being able to completely stop an autonomous vehicle or a self-driving car in its tracks, because just with some laser pointers and a Raspberry Pi, some researchers at Security Innovation, actually, at the time, were able to make the autonomous vehicle think that there were other things in its way and just completely stopped it in its tracks. So again, not to put too much fear in here, but since cars are connected, they are part of the Internet of Things, folks are starting to poke at them in very significant and serious ways. And Larry and the Ponemon Institute recently did some research on the state of software security in the automotive industry. And he's going to talk about that on the next slide or so. This is a report that came out just in February of 2019, just 2 months ago. And it was first presented at the RSA conference just last month in San Francisco, which is why you see the little hashtag RSAC up in the right-hand corner. If you'd like a copy of this report, just email research@ponemon.org. Or you can send me an email at the end of this presentation. My contact info will be shown. But now let's hear a little bit about from Larry about the survey itself.
This is data from the study that we completed with Synopsys. And if you're interested in getting a copy of this wonderful report, which was released a couple of weeks ago, just send us your email send an email to research@ponemon.org. That's research@Ponemon, Ponemon.org, not Pokemon again, Ponemon. So some of the data findings: software security is not keeping pace with technology. That's what we discovered, or we learned from our research study. And there are many other data points, but I think these are by far the most salient. 84% of our respondents said they have a concern that cybersecurity practices are not keeping pace with evolving technologies. 84%, folks. That's a huge number, any way you slice it, right? 30% say they do not have an established product cybersecurity program or team in place. 30% out of 100%. That's a huge number. We're talking about how important security is in the automobile industry or automotive. And then 63% test less than half of hardware, software, and other technologies for vulnerabilities. 63%. Wow. And these numbers, when we think about the potential disaster that I mentioned before, these numbers are really unacceptable and have to change. Things have to change. And some of the changes that wouldn't just be better technology, it's also creating a security culture, which I think is very important here.
So again, just to stress one of the data points that Larry points out here, 63% or almost 2/3 of automotive manufacturers are testing less than 50% of the software and hardware in the car for security vulnerabilities. And to me, that is a staggeringly low number. However, I do want to talk about some positive benefits of connected cars. We've spent the first 10 minutes of this presentation talking about things that can go wrong. And many of us already know a lot of these things that can go wrong. So let's talk about the positive side. Well, connected cars bring a lot of benefits to daily life, not just the entertainment and the infotainment systems that we all enjoy, but also real-time traffic conditions, navigation, vehicle conditions, as I was mentioning earlier, like the tire pressure monitor, and very importantly, safety. And that's the program that I want to spend the next 10 minutes or so talking about. It's a program that's called V2V, or vehicle to vehicle, or talking cars program. And I'll talk a little bit more about it in a few minutes. But before I do, I want to talk about the reason that the U.S. Department of Transportation has created this program, the Talking Cars program, or V2V. And it's very specifically for this reason. It is safety. It's a safety of life program, and it is a safety of life issue for higher speed crashes. Automobile fatalities are the leading cause of death for people aged 15 to 34 in the US. And it has been that way for over a decade, nearly 2 decades, in fact. And it's not just fatalities, but there's a lot of injuries, 4.5 million injuries per year. Congestion and cost is massive. And driver error accounts for almost 100% of crashes, 94%. Now, what this program, the Talking Cars program, is meant to do is to take traffic safety and move it from passive to proactive. And what do I mean by that? By passive, I mean, back in the early 70s, when I was riding around in my mom's Dodge Dart, we didn't even have seatbelts, let alone shatterproof glass in the windshields and things like that. But when the introduction of the seatbelt became mandatory, that's a passive restraint. If something goes bad, restrain the driver. That evolved into active safety in the 80s with airbags. If something goes bad, proactively push out the airbags to try to prevent injury to the driver. And now with the Talking Cars program, we even have the evolution of that, which is preventative. And the V2V, or Talking Cars program, is intended to prevent automobile fatalities. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play you a short video. It's only about 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, from the Department of Transportation that explains what the Talking Cars program, or V2V, is all about. Now, I think it's a little bit propaganda-y, but that's quite okay. This is straight from the Department of Transportation. When it's done, we'll pick it apart a little bit and talk about what's real and what the implications are, particularly to safety, security, and privacy. So here we go from the Department of Transportation for the next 2 minutes.
Imagine a future where vehicles are able to communicate with each other. This vehicle-to-vehicle, or V2V, technology would provide drivers with crucial information when they need it and provide them with a warning of a potential crash. V2V provides drivers with 360-degree awareness of similarly equipped vehicles within a range of approximately 300 meters, or 984 feet. This secure system keeps personal information anonymous and does not track your vehicle. Drivers will receive warnings that inform them of potential hazards through a visual display, seat vibration, or tone. These are only warnings. The driver remains in control of the vehicle at all times. These warnings can help drivers respond quickly to avoid potential crashes. For example, the Intersection Movement Assist application warns drivers when it's unsafe to enter an intersection. The Do Not Pass application warns drivers when it is not safe to pass a slower moving vehicle. The Emergency Electronic Brake Light application notifies the driver when an out-of-sight vehicle several cars ahead is braking. The Blind Spot Warning application allows drivers to virtually see what's happening in his or her blind spot. These are just a few of the apps that may be available to help prevent car crashes in the near future. So how does V2V work? V2V uses a wireless protocol similar to Wi-Fi called Dedicated Short Range Communications, or DSRC for short. When DSRC is combined with GPS technology, the result is a low-cost V2V communication system that provides a 360-degree view of similarly equipped vehicles within communication range. Transmitted messages common to all vehicles include current GPS position, vehicle speed, acceleration, and heading, vehicle control information such as the transmission state, brake status, and steering wheel angle, as well as the vehicle's path history and path prediction. V2V does not include current advanced technologies such as navigation, internet access, assistance services, rear view cameras, and other advanced technologies. Now it's your turn. Are you ready for V2V technology in your next vehicle?
Okay, so we heard from the Department of Transportation what V2V or V2X is all about. Basically, they intend for all automotive manufacturers to put more hardware and software in your cars that is going to broadcast your speed and location constantly. Now again, normally at this point in the presentation, when I'm talking with security and privacy professionals, they tend to freak out a little bit because the thought of your car transmitting your speed and location constantly tends to freak people out. However, keep in mind, the reason that this system was developed is for safety of life. It's meant to prevent car crashes. And as we'll talk in a couple of slides, it was created with privacy by design in mind from the start, as well as security practices to ensure that it's very difficult to tamper with and contains no personally identifiable information. So let's talk about some of the applications. We talked about vehicle-to-vehicle communication. That's pretty obvious. So cars can basically see around corners and prevent crashes, going through intersections. But there's also V2I, so you can talk with infrastructure. Think about that as street lights. Also, roadside equipment, if there is emergency call boxes. Let's say, for example, you own a car that was built before V2V was in vogue. And there are cars that are already riding around with V2V installed, by the way. If you have, you can buy an aftermarket device. So you can put a V2V system into your, say, 1967 Camaro. And there's also something called V2VRU, or Vulnerable Roadside User. And you've got to love the government and their three-letter acronyms. A VRU is basically a pedestrian on a bicycle or on a motorcycle. So they'll essentially install an application on their phone that is receive only, so they can receive messages but cannot transmit messages, because as you might imagine, a bad actor with a mobile device that is transmitting, basically pretending to be a car or something, can cause a lot of havoc just by throwing that in the middle of I-95 or something like that. So these are all the different applications of V2X. And as I mentioned, a lot of these we've already talked about. Emergency brake light notification, weather warnings, do not pass warnings, but also there is going to be a subset of vehicles that are equipped with V2X that are specifically identified, and those are usually emergency vehicles, first responders, police cars, fire engines, ambulances. And the reason that they will be identified is so the system can notify you, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Driver, there is an emergency vehicle coming behind you, please move to the side of the road. Now, as we saw in the promotional video from the Department of Transportation, just take the example of an intersection. One car is coming through the intersection, they have a green light, another car is going through the intersection, they have a red light, and the drivers will be notified, first, visual notification, then maybe their seat or seat might vibrate, or the steering wheel might vibrate. Now, the minimum requirement for the specification is that driver notification. So the driver has to have some kind of message. However, there's nothing stopping an OEM or an automotive manufacturer from adding features such as control system features. So if a pending accident is anticipated, they could actually stop the car, which means they're now tied into the control systems like braking and steering and etc. And if you noticed in the Department of Transportation video, information is pulled from the CAN bus and control systems. Your acceleration, what gear are you in, drive or park or standard, what's the angle of your steering wheel, the direction you're heading, current location. So there's a lot of information that's getting broadcast, and it's getting broadcast constantly. It's getting broadcast in 802.11. It's a variant of Wi-Fi, essentially, short-range radio, and most likely is going to coexist with 5G cellular. In fact, right now, there is a pilot project going on in the Denver area that is using both 5G and DSRC at the same time, and comparing how both of those systems respond, act. Does the 5G cellular give you better throughput, richer apps? Does it have more dead zones, et cetera, et cetera? Now, the system is broadcasting these messages 10 times per second, which is a lot. So if you think about all of the different cars on the road, think about 40 million cars in the US, all transmitting 10 messages per second, that's a whole heck of a lot of messages. It is essentially the largest public key infrastructure system ever conceived. And this system, unlike many PKI systems, does not have a central body of trust. There is no storing of the messages. There's no third-party verification of the messages. All the messages are validated from within the vehicle itself. So there's no storage either on vehicle or in any kind of central repository or a third party. Now, that's not stopping anyone from setting up antennas along a certain stretch of road that they want to and collecting all this information for business purposes, maybe to push them information about, that, hey, there's a Starbucks coming up, would you like a latte? A lot of that stuff is already happening. But again, these messages don't have any personally identifiable information in them. They don't have anything about your car, not your vehicle ID number. There's no black box for logging, so it can't be used for forensics. In fact, the messages aren't even encrypted because they don't need to be. There's no sensitive information or data that they're trying to protect. And the reason for that is because privacy by design was used. And privacy by design being a user-centric system that is intended to be proactive in protecting privacy, visible and transparent, meaning keep everything open as far as what you're doing. Embed privacy into the design of the system. Don't try to retrofit a system later. These are sort of the 8 tenets of privacy by design. And all of these were built into the V2V system. Now, unfortunately, most of these were not built into a lot of the other systems that are in your automobile. So the V2V system does not really increase to any measurable amount the hackability of your car. There are many, many other systems that are easier to be hacked in the V2V system. And even if someone does hack the V2V system, there's really no privacy information that can be extracted. So again, that's something that was important in the development and design of this system. And speaking about the importance of security, safety, and privacy in connected cars, let's hear again from my friend Larry at the Ponemon Institute. This is another study that he conducted. This is called Will Privacy and Security Concerns Stall the Adoption of Autonomous Automobiles? It was published maybe 15 months ago. And if you'd like a copy of this, also just send me an email at the end of the presentation. But first, let's hear from Larry what he thinks about this study.
Hello again, Larry Ponemon, your virtual presenter, is here once more, and now I'm going to share with you some data points on privacy, security, and safety of self-driving automobiles. Now keep in mind the people completing this research are consumers, people like you and me who may someday buy a self-driving automobile, or alternatively may be so scared out of our gourd that we will not even sit in one as a passenger. So just keep in mind that consumer perceptions can be fickle. Today, they may be feeling one way, and then they'll hear a negative news story and feel differently about it. So things are ever changing in this domain. But this study is relatively new. It was conducted a little over a year ago. And I think we presented this at the LA Car Show. It was a very interesting time. So with that being said, what did we learn? Now, using a 1 to 10 point scale from 1 being not concerned about it to 10 being very concerned, so the mean, median, and mode is 5.5. So anything greater than 5.5 is trending to a high degree of concern. Anything below 5.5 is trending to not concerned. And the numbers are interesting because they're pretty high, especially for security and safety. Security, we get a number of 6.68 on a 10-point scale. Safety is 6.5 on a 10-point scale. And interestingly enough, privacy at 4.88. So if you're in privacy and you can't declare victory, that people aren't concerned about privacy, they are concerned about it, but relative to safety and security, it's kind of on a lower level. Now, I will submit that if we did the study today, because of all the news stories about Google and Facebook and all these companies losing our data and just a mess, I would expect that percentage to be substantially higher. That's conjecture on my part. Now, we are continuing to do this research, and I'll keep you posted as we get new data points now and in the future, I promise. So with that being said, let's kind of look at our next data point. Now, this is going back to security experts like you. How important is privacy and security? And this is on education on secure coding methods not being prioritized. This is very important because obviously in order to make those components work as an integrated whole from a secure point of view, we have to be able to rely on the developer, the person that's developing the code. That's kind of the first line of defense is safe coding. And then there are other checks and balances you can have in place, but the coding stage, the early phase, even the design phase, becomes very important to ensuring that these components have an ample level of security built in. And the system as a whole works and doesn't have vulnerabilities and holes that would make it easy for the hacker to get inside. Enough said about that. So only 33% of respondents say their organizations educate developers on secure coding methods. Wow. 60% say a lack of understanding or training on secure coding practices is a primary factor that leads to vulnerabilities, which kind of makes sense. The question here that was in the survey, what activities has your organization employed to secure automobile software, technology, and components? And so educate developers on secure coding methods was one of the choices, and that's only 33%. 1/3, 2/3 basically did not check the box. Very concerning, folks. This could be an indicator of a big problem.
And I certainly agree with Larry on that one. Despite the fact that 65% says that a lack of training was the primary cause for insecurity in software-based automotive systems, only 1 out of 3 organizations are providing that kind of education to developers on secure coding methods. Again, one more from Larry.
Here's a stat that I think is very interesting. It's not a Ponemon study, but it's kind of a consistent finding. 20% of consumers responded.
Oh, sorry, accidental click. Let's go back.
Here's a stat that I think is very interesting. It's not a Ponemon study, but it's kind of a consistent finding. 20% of consumers responded who complained they would never again buy a car from their brand if it has been hacked. So, if you're worried about losing your marketplace, 28% loss in a marketplace because of concern is a big deal. It can be very painful to the organization. That being said, let me turn it back over to you, Ed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. Always nice to have you, even in virtual form. So next, I want to talk a little bit about the V2X pilots that have been going on. The first pilot was done in Ann Arbor, and the greater Ann Arbor area, I should say, and it included 30,000 vehicles. It was done over the span of about 2.5 years, and tremendous success in the Ann Arbor vehicle program. Not only was a lot learned that helped improve the system, but there were no accidents, and there was a number that were avoided due to the driver notification. Now, there was another pilot that's still going on presently, and that's in Manhattan. It is right in the middle of New York City. And for that one, the V2X technology was installed in 10,000 of the yellow taxi cabs. So if you want to test a system in a high-stress area, nothing better than all those taxi cabs driving around Manhattan. And again, so far, the program has been very successful. The third pilot program that I'll talk about out of 4 is one that was done in Wyoming, which was intended to improve trucking along Interstate 80. Now you think, well, why Interstate 80 in Wyoming? That's got to be one of the least populated or least trafficked stretches of road in the country. And the fact is, you're absolutely right. It is. The two things that tend to happen on I-80, first of all, there tends to be a fair amount of trucking convoys. And trucking convoys, they will drive together in very close proximity. In fact, some trucking companies are using self-driving or autonomous vehicles in extremely close proximity. And the last thing you want is that convoy to have some kind of crash. But then, if there is a driver in the car and there is a crash, unfortunately, even though there is many fewer crashes on highways in rural areas, those crashes are significantly more likely to result in fatalities because of the lack of nearby first responders. So you really want to avoid those crashes at all costs. So the V2V system there, again, 94% of crashes are driver error. So if you can help prevent even a small percentage of that, you will help these truckers in remote areas avoid crashes and be waiting for a long time for first responders to show up. There are also pilot programs going on in Europe and in Asia, and all of the major manufacturers are engaged, everyone from BMW to Ford and Volkswagen, General Motors, etc. And the standards have been set. They are generally agreed upon between the US and Europe. Others are either following suit or building very, very similar systems, like in Australia. And then other organizations like China are just doing their own thing. The fourth pilot program that I'll talk about was in Tampa. And in Tampa, a little bit different here, the Department of Defense, Department of Transportation rather, specifically wanted to look at traffic congestion in morning rush hour, wrong way entries onto highways. How many times have you read that there was a car going the wrong way down a highway and crashed into another car and killed someone? And also pedestrian safety around certain areas that are highly trafficked by pedestrians. And all of those are happening in and around Tampa. And again, so far, all of these studies have gone very, very positively. Now, in the US, initially this was a mandate from the Department of Transportation. And initially it was a mandate that all manufacturers had to comply with the 2020 model year automobiles and every year thereafter. there was a certain ramp up. It was supposed to be 50% for the 2020 model, 75% for 2021, and then 100% 2022 and on. But then with the latest administration change in November 2016, that mandate was shifted. So it is now no longer a mandate, still very well could come back as a mandate. However, most of the automotive manufacturers had already started down the path of installing V2X in most of their systems and most of their cars. General Motors was the first one to do it. They started shipping cars with V2X in August of 2017, so they're coming up on about 2 years. Volkswagen last year announced that they were putting the V2V system in all of the Volkswagens, starting with the higher-end Audis, moving all the way down over the course of a number of years. Now, the reason that manufacturers like Volkswagen and General Motors are starting in their higher-end automobiles, such as Cadillacs and Audis, is because there's more margin to work with in those higher-end automobiles. The V2X system is, it will add approximately $250 per car. So the automotive manufacturers want to do it in places where they have higher margin. So when they get to the point where it's more of a volume play, they understand the systems much better, and we're now approaching critical mass where the cars can talk with each other. Because as of right now, Cadillacs can talk to other Cadillacs, but they can't talk with the Ford Fusions. And it's not really until you get critical mass of at least 40% of the automobiles on the road installed with the V2V system until you can really start to reap some of the benefits of it. And lucky us, government is getting involved as well. This fine gentleman, who is a senator from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, my home state, Senator Markey, like all good politicians, always has his mouth open, but he did actually commission a very useful study a few years ago called Tracking and Hacking. And one of the conclusions and one of the sound bites that came out of that is that Senator Markey determined that drivers should not have to choose between being connected and being protected, which of course I completely agree with, and that's a great soundbite for a politician to use when they're trying to get attention. He then teamed up with Senator Blumenthal, and they introduced an act into the Senate, into Congress rather, and this was all about security and privacy in your car. And they called it the SPY Act for security and privacy in your car, which I think is a horribly named act. I don't know why you would name a Security and Privacy Act the SPY Act unless you want to freak people out, but that's what they did. Despite the name, the act actually has a number of very positive attributes. It does call for the introduction of the concept of cybersecurity standards, a cybersecurity window sticker or dashboard sticker that has the OEM provide self-attestation to the amount of cybersecurity due diligence that they put into the vehicle, very similar to what is the gas mileage and the horsepower in the car. So it's got some very positive attributes. In the automotive industry, very similar to other industries in the past, is forming an information sharing and analysis center, or an ISAC, just like similar industries in the past, such as the financial services industry. And the idea here is that folks are sharing information in a non-competitive way, which is great. There are some challenges that still remain. Governance and ownership of the PKI system. If indeed it's going to be a third-party trusted system, or is it going to be one where all of the identification is self-contained in each individual record or certificate. And I try to do my best to make it through every presentation without using the word blockchain, but dare I say this may be an application for blockchain. We shall see. Cross-border harmonization issues, also a bit of a challenge still. Even though the US and the EU do have things organized in compatible ways, they're not identical. And there's still a bit of debate about whether or not the system should be the 802.11p, or it should be 5G, or they should coexist. and of course, what are some of the compatibility issues with each. Now, many of the suppliers in the V2X chain are building systems that are compatible with both, or that work with both. But whenever you have more than one standard, things can go a little bit haywire or awry. But just some final thoughts before we pause for some questions. Keep in mind, it is still difficult to hack cars en masse. There have been isolated reports of a certain car getting hacked or a certain system getting hacked, and in pretty much all of those systems, the hacker still needed at least temporary physical access to the vehicle first in order to extract some information and then go in and hack something remotely. And the automotive industry is learning a lot of useful parallels from traditional IT, such as educating software teams on how to write secure code, using peer-to-peer systems, end-to-end encryption, authentication and authorization, code signing for over-the-air software updates, things like that. And these pilot programs are proving very valuable. All of them, in fact, have shown to have a lot of promise. So what can you do? Well, you can volunteer for pilot programs. If you happen to be in the Denver area, there's one going on right now. I think Tampa may still be going on. You can also get involved in standards organizations. You can participate with any of your congressmen and women or senators who are interested in automotive security. And of course, there are plenty of free training courses and resources available from organizations such as OWASP, the Open Web Application Security Project, and vendors like Security Innovation. We offer plenty of free training ourselves. The Uber message here, no pun intended, is to keep calm and drive. Now, I did promise to provide some contact information. Here is mine and Larry's. If you do tweet, either to myself at AppSec or the Ponemon Institute, which is at Ponemon Research, please do include the hashtag #LarryDon'tTweet. I'm trying to build up a little Twitter meme here to get Larry to tweet a little bit more. He's still a telephone and email guy. But regardless, you can call us, you can text us, you can tweet us, you can email us. And again, if you're interested in any one of those research projects that we mentioned, any of the studies that Larry has commissioned, just send us one of those to one of those email addresses, and we'll be happy to facilitate. So with that, I'm going to pause. I want to try to read a couple of questions that came in, but as I'm doing that, let me turn things back over to Rebecca. And Rebecca, can you just let folks know how to submit questions once again if they have any? And then if you'd be so kind after you do that is to just let me know which one of these questions you think I should address first.
Absolutely. And everyone, you should see a submit the question button in your pane in BrightTalk, and that is how you submit questions. We have had a few that have come in, Ed. I'm not sure if you see them in the chat window, but I can read one of them here. How anonymous is V2X? Are VIN or license plates transferred?
Okay, that's a good question, and I apologize. I had just muted myself, so that's a fine question. They are completely anonymous, all of those messages. There's no vehicle identification number, there's no license plate, there's no driver information. They're anonymous. So it's saying there is a car going in this direction at this speed at this time, but it's not telling you it's Larry's car, or it's not telling you it's a Tesla, or it's not telling you it's a car with this VIN. So completely anonymous, and again, that is by design. So let me see another question that came in here. How is this linked to the Cooperative Intelligent Transport Systems, or CITS? So this program is related to ITS, Intelligent Transport Systems. The Department of Transportation is the chief sponsor of this in the US, and ETSI, the European Telecommunication Standard Institute, is the chief sponsor in Europe. But it is all part of the intelligent transport system. So just like it's part of connected car in general, but it is, the V2V is specifically a safety of life program from the Department of Transportation. So another question that I see came in, how or should we be concerned about the communication modes, such as direct versus network? So in V2X, all of the communication is direct. In fact, it is one-to-many communication. Your vehicle status, location, all of that sort of stuff is being broadcast at about 300-meter range constantly, and anyone within that 300-meter range with an appropriately equipped receiver is receiving the message. And again, that's by design, so it is point-to-point. So how concerned should you be with that mode? It all depends on what the trust you have in the message being sent and how it's been secured. I actually have a lot of faith in how it has been designed, how all of the privacy information has been stripped out. So I actually feel quite confident in the security and the privacy of this particular system. So another question that recently came in, any system better for V2V like QNX versus others? What is the effort required by car manufacturers to adhere to this security effort? In automotive, I mean, you have a couple of dominant operating systems for sure. QNX is one of them, but the V2V system is predominantly integrated into the infotainment system. It is basically a driver app, an infotainment app, and even though it does have to pull from systems like the CAN bus for brake status and location, it has to pull from the GPS system for physical location. It is very much an infotainment system, and for the most part, there is a dominant operating system there that most of these the V2V systems have to be compatible with. But you also have to be compatible with the wireless modem that is used and the chipsets that are used, whether it's from NXP or it's Qualcomm. So there's a lot of standardization that you have to implement depending on the system that you're building for, and of course a lot of compatibility testing that has to go on. In fact, there are a number of different they call them plug fest or plug tests that happen over the course of the year, where the supply chain members get together and test their systems in various configurations just to make sure everything works. So again, from a compatibility perspective, I think things are actually working pretty well. And I'm really happy to say that a lot of not just the pilots, but the automotive manufacturers that have implemented this already, like Volkswagen and General Motors, have been very pleased with not just the responsiveness, but the relatively low cost that has been added to each individual automobile. Another question that just came in, is there a security framework adopted by automotive manufacturers as a whole, such as NIST, etc.? Yes and no. The most common is the MISRA standards, and MISRA is more of a quality control and documentation standard than it is a security standard. It does have some security elements to it, but it definitely needs improvement. The V2V system specifically, though, was built with security and privacy, specifically privacy by design standards from the start. So the automotive industry as a whole, I think, is behind the times, certainly behind most of the financial services institutions and behind a lot of the software vendors, but they're catching up fast and they're taking things very seriously, and that is very, very encouraging signs overall. So have time for one more question, and then we'll be at the 55-minute and time to move on. Last question here. This is a repeat about transparency and privacy. Okay, I think those are all the questions that I see. So with that, I will stop the share. I will thank you for your time. We finished just a few minutes early, like all good software programs should, and we'll move on. Thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.